Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, you'll hear an inspiring story about how a single act of kindness can change a life forever. Follow the journey of Lucas, a man who faced unimaginable hardships, and Emily, a CEO whose life was touched by his compassion. Together, they discover the power of empathy, hope, and second chances, proving that even the smallest gestures can create lasting impact. Stay with us as we share this heartfelt tale of love, resilience, and transformation. Nightfall settled heavily over New York City, wrapping the streets in a bitter wind and silence. Lucas, a 46-year-old man, sat on a rusted bench at a bus stop in Lower Manhattan. He clutched a worn backpack, 5 rejected resumes, and a stubborn hope that refused to die. Once a respected structural engineer who helped build skyscrapers, he now spent his days trying to rebuild himself. His unshaven face and tired eyes couldn't hide the dignity he fought to preserve. With every gust of wind, he curled into himself, pulling his only coat tighter around his body. That same night, a young woman approached the bus stop in a rush. Her hands trembled, and her lips were tinged blue. She wore a business suit, no tights, no coat, clearly unprepared for the freezing cold. When she arrived, she murmured a soft, "Good evening," and crossed her arms in a futile attempt to stay warm. Lucas glanced at her, noticing her trembling breath and hunched shoulders. There was something about her that stirred him. Maybe it was the contrast between elegance and vulnerability, or maybe it was just recognizing another kind of pain that felt all too familiar. Lucas hesitated for a moment, then slipped off his own coat, his only one, frayed at the edges but still warm, and offered it to her. She turned to him, startled. "I can't take this," she said firmly. But he insisted. "I've lost enough today. This is all I have left to give." For a moment, her eyes welled with tears. It wasn't just the coat. It was the gesture. That someone with so little still had something to offer. She accepted it silently, overwhelmed, unable to find the words to respond. She took a deep breath, composing herself, then introduced herself as Emily. Lucas smiled and told her his name. They exchanged a few quiet words, unaware that this brief meeting would change the course of both their lives. When the bus finally arrived, Emily hesitated before boarding, as if something in her wanted to stay. Before stepping on, she reached into her purse and handed Lucas a small card. "In case you ever need anything," she said. He glanced at it quickly. Emily Monroe, Infinity Group, CEO. Lucas tucked it away, expecting nothing. He had long learned not to place hope in powerful names. The bus pulled away, leaving behind the shrill wind and a man without a coat, but somehow with a new kind of warmth in his chest. It wasn't just the act of giving. It was the look of genuine gratitude he'd received. He leaned back on the bench, hugging his backpack like it could shield him from the cold. He had no idea if he'd ever see Emily again, and couldn't imagine that this meeting would open a door he didn't even know existed. All he wanted was to survive the night and try again in the morning. Across the city, Emily stepped into the warm lobby of her high-rise building, still wearing Lucas's coat. The doorman greeted her with respect, but she barely noticed. She rode the elevator to the top floor, slipped off her shoes at the door, and slowly walked into her living room. When she finally took off the coat, something fell from the inside pocket. It was a crumpled piece of paper, childlike and colorful, with a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands and the words, "I love you, Daddy, Noah." Emily sat on the couch, stunned, as if the world had shifted. She held the drawing with trembling hands, unable to stop the emotion rising in her chest. The name Noah echoed inside her, unlocking a long-buried memory. Years ago, when she was a frightened child at a cold group home in Chicago, a stranger had taken off his own coat and wrapped it around her during a freezing night. She never knew his name, but the gesture had stayed with her forever. And now, decades later, another man had done the same. Coincidence or not, it pierced through layers of success and power, striking something deeply human inside her. In that moment, Emily wasn't the CEO of a tech empire. She was just a woman, cold, grateful, and deeply moved. She walked to her bedroom, took out her phone, and snapped a photo of the drawing. Then she sent it to herself with a note, "Never forget." That night, she slept with the coat laid gently beside her, as if it were an emotional blanket. For the first time in years, she dreamed not of board meetings or stock prices, but of warmth, kindness, and a part of herself she had almost lost. Meanwhile, Lucas curled up in the back of his old pickup truck, parked beneath a bridge in the young Bronx. Wrapped in donated blankets, he drifted toward sleep, clinging to fading dreams of better days. But something about this night felt different. The silence wasn't as heavy. The sorrow didn't sting as much. Maybe it was the act of kindness. Maybe it was Emily's eyes. Maybe it was the thought of Noah, his son, who he hadn't seen in years but still kept alive in every breath of hope. He held a photo of his family close to his chest, and despite the cold, he felt warm. In the noisy, indifferent chaos of a city like New York, two strangers had crossed paths by chance or perhaps by something greater. A man who had lost everything, yet still chose kindness. A woman who had everything, but needed to remember what truly mattered. And in between them, an old coat with a child's drawing in its pocket, an invisible thread connecting past, present, and future. Nothing about that moment was planned. But sometimes, the biggest turning points come from the most unexpected acts. One small gesture of kindness, offered without expecting anything in return. Lucas's mornings began long before the sun painted the sky. The narrow back seat of his rusted pickup truck served as his bed, closet, and shelter from the harshness of the world. Each morning, he folded his donated blankets with care, tucking away the thin cushion that shielded him from the cold metal of the truck. He washed his face using bottled water and wiped it with an old t-shirt, making sure to check his reflection in the cracked side mirror. Despite his circumstances, Lucas made a point of appearing clean, composed. Dignity, to him, wasn't about luxury, it was about intention. Taped to the ceiling of the truck was a small, worn photograph of his family. His wife, Sarah, smiled. Beside him, her eyes bright with hope. And in front of them stood a small boy with wide brown eyes. Noah. It had been nearly 3 years since Lucas had lost both. Not to death, but to the slow unraveling of life. After Sarah's passing from cancer, grief overwhelmed him. He missed work, missed deadlines, and eventually lost his job. Without stable income, custody of Noah was transferred to Sarah's sister. Lucas didn't fight it, not then. He wasn't ready. He was broken, but broken didn't mean defeated. With every breath, Lucas promised himself that one day he would earn back the right to be Noah's father. He knew it wouldn't come from pity or shortcuts, but from rebuilding brick by brick with patience and persistence. Every day, after finishing his morning routine, Lucas set out across the city with a folder full of resumes. He walked from business to business, applying for anything: handyman jobs, maintenance positions, part-time labor. Most days, he came back with polite refusals or no answer at all. But each rejection only sharpened his resolve. When the search for work ended, his afternoons often led him to the public library. There, in the warmth and quiet, Lucas read obsessively. He studied new technologies, watched videos on construction innovation, and read self-help books about resilience and mental strength. He wasn't just passing time, he was preparing. Preparing to be useful again. Preparing to be the kind of man who could stand tall in front of his son and say, I never gave up on you." Librarians began to recognize him, some offering warm smiles, others occasionally slipping him free coffee vouchers from nearby CAFE. ****. One of his routines was to visit a barbershop every 2 weeks, not to be pampered, but because he believed appearances mattered. "If Noah ever runs into me, I want him to see someone trying," he once told the barber. The man never charged him full price. Lucas would sweep the floors afterward, calling it a fair trade. These small gestures, these dignified agreements, kept him afloat emotionally. In a world where people rarely saw the homeless as humans, every act of mutual respect reminded him that he still belonged somewhere, even if that somewhere hadn't revealed itself yet. Nightfall brought new challenges. Lucas parked his truck in different parts of the Bronx, always rotating to avoid police attention or theft. Before locking the doors, he would take a moment to whisper a few words to Sarah's photo. "I'm trying," he'd say. "I promise I'm trying." His love for her had never faded. She had been his anchor, his balance. Losing her had unmoored him. But even in his grief, Lucas had never lost his moral compass. He didn't steal. He didn't lie. He didn't give up. There was still something sacred in trying, even when the world forgot you. Sometimes he would sit and write letters to Noah. He didn't know where to send them, but he wrote anyway. Pages filled with fatherly advice, birthday wishes, memories of bedtime stories. He signed each one with love, folded it carefully, and stored it in a shoebox beneath the driver's seat. One day, he'd tell himself, one day I'll hand these to him. It was his way of staying connected to the one person who gave his life direction. His son was the lighthouse he looked toward when everything else felt lost at sea. There were nights when the city's noise faded and loneliness crept in like a fog. Those were the hardest. Lucas would stare at the ceiling of the truck, listening to the sounds of cars above, wondering if the life he once had was now beyond reach. But every time despair whispered in his ear, he fought back with memories. The first time Noah walked, Sarah's laugh echoing in their old kitchen, the smell of pancakes on Saturday mornings. These flashes of joy weren't ghosts. They were fuel, proof that he had once built something beautiful and could again. Lucas never blamed anyone for his fall. He didn't curse the system or resent the people who walked past him. He believed that life was unfair to everyone at some point. It was what you did with that unfairness that defined you. His hardships hadn't made him bitter. They had carved out a deeper well of compassion. That's why, on that freezing night when he gave Emily his coat, it hadn't felt like a sacrifice. It had felt like the natural thing to do. Because when you have nothing left and still choose kindness, that's when you truly matter. In every sense, Lucas lived a life of quiet persistence. He asked for no praise, needed no spotlight. What he wanted was simple: a chance to prove he could start again. A job, a roof, a place where Noah could come visit. Maybe even one day, live with him again. He didn't need the world's validation, just one door to open. And until that door came, he would keep walking, keep studying, keep showing up with resins in hand and hope in his chest. Because Lucas believed in comebacks, and he believed his was just beginning. Emily Monroe stepped into her penthouse apartment, the door clicking softly behind her. The warmth of the space contrasted sharply with the icy wind still clinging to her skin. She removed her heels one by one, rubbing her sore ankles, and made her way to the living room. The city lights flickered beyond the glass walls, but her focus was elsewhere. She was still wearing Lucas's coat. It hung on her shoulders, oversized, but somehow comforting, like a shield, like a memory. As she sat on the couch and took it off, something slid out of the inside pocket and fluttered to the floor. She bent down and picked up the item, a piece of folded, slightly torn paper. When she opened it, her breath caught. It was a child's drawing. 2 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in large uneven letters, were the words, "I love you, Daddy Noah." Emily stared at the paper as if it were a relic from another world. Something about it bypassed her mind and went straight to her heart. The image was simple, innocent, but it hit with the force of a tidal wave. Tears welled up before she could stop them. Her throat tightened. Her hands trembled. In that moment, time rewound itself. Emily was no longer the powerful CEO of a billion-dollar company. She was a little girl again shivering on a bench outside a foster home in Chicago. That night had been one of the coldest in memory. She remembered clutching her arms around herself, teeth chattering, when a man walking by stopped, took off his coat, and placed it gently over her shoulders. She never saw him again. She never even knew his name. But that act had stayed with her. It had planted a seed in her soul. A seed that had grown, but also gotten buried. For years, Emily had climbed the corporate ladder, making hard decisions, leading massive teams, attending endless meetings. She was respected, admired, feared even. But she couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her and seen vulnerability, or kindness, or humanity. Lucas had. In a moment where he had nothing, he gave. And in doing so, he reminded her of something she didn't even realize she had lost: her empathy. That one small gesture cracked through the armor she had built. It reminded her that she didn't become who she was by ignoring others, but by caring deeply. Emily sat with the drawing for a long time. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a mirror. It reflected back at her the person she used to be, the one who promised herself that if she ever had the power, she'd use it to protect people like that man had once protected her. Somewhere along the way, the suits, the titles, the boardrooms had dulled that promise. Not out of malice, but distraction. Success has a way of making people forget their starting point. But this piece of paper had jolted her awake. She couldn't unsee it now. She got up, went to her desk, and opened a locked drawer. Inside was a notebook she hadn't touched in years. It was her old Y journal, the one where she'd written, back when Infinity Group was just a vision, about her purpose, her goals, her ideals. She flipped through the pages, reading her younger self's handwriting. Empower people. See them. Honor kindness. Emily's fingers paused on a line she had underlined twice. I was once saved by a stranger. One day, I want to pay it forward. That night, under the city's glow, she decided the time had come. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Her mind raced with questions. Who was Lucas? What had happened to him? Why was a man who used to build the city now sleeping inside a truck? She didn't want pity. She wanted understanding. And quietly, she wanted to do something. Not out of charity, but out of balance. Restoring something that had tilted too far. So just before dawn, she sent a discreet message to her executive assistant. I need you to find someone for me. His name is Lucas. He's living out of a truck in the Bronx. No, I'm not joking. The reply came a few hours later, full of confusion. Is he a former employee? Is this about a security issue? Emily didn't answer directly. She just said, it's personal. Please do it. Infinity Group had the resources. They handled high-level logistics for governments. For global contracts, finding one man in New York wouldn't be impossible. While her team got to work, Emily kept Lucas's coat folded beside her chair and the drawing placed carefully in a frame, and now sat on her desk, a silent guardian of her renewed mission. Every time she glanced at it, she felt grounded. In meetings that day, her thoughts wandered. As people pitched strategies and reports flew across screens, all she could think about was a man sitting in the cold, trying to give his son a reason to be proud. Lucas didn't have a resume that would impress her board of directors. But he had something rarer, a core that hadn't hardened, even under pressure. Emily saw that now, and it wasn't just about helping him. It was about rediscovering a version of herself, one that could still lead with heart. That night, she sat alone on her balcony, holding the coat in her lap. Beneath the stars, Emily whispered, "Thank you." She wasn't sure if she was thanking Lucas or the universe or that stranger from her childhood. Maybe all three. But she knew this wasn't over. Not for her. Not for Lucas. His gesture had shaken something loose inside her, and she wouldn't let it fade. Some stories are quiet revolutions, and this was one of them. What Lucas gave her wasn't just warmth on a freezing night. He gave her back a piece of herself. And now she was ready to return the favor, not out of duty, but because it finally felt right. By early morning, Emily's decision was firm. She no longer questioned why she felt so drawn to find Lucas. She simply knew she had to. It wasn't just about gratitude. It was about alignment. Something in her life had shifted since that night. She couldn't go back to business as usual, while someone like him, dignified, generous, forgotten, was out there. Her assistant, Amanda, had reached out to a few quiet contacts, people who specialized in discreet searches for philanthropic purposes. "Don't worry," Amanda had said cautiously. "We'll find him." Emily didn't need reassurance. She only needed time. By midday, the first traces emerged. A man matching Lucas's description had been seen sleeping in a truck near a scrapyard in the Bronx. Others had seen him around a local library and a community center that offered free showers and meals. Emily's team mapped the sightings, triangulating a rough location where he seemed to return most often. As the information poured in, Emily felt a strange mix of nerves and resolve. She had read thousands of resumes in her life, recruited high-level executives, but this somehow felt like the most important interview she'd ever pursue. Her team prepared a formal briefing, complete with maps, notes, and a suggested protocol. "Should we send a company representative?" Amanda asked. "Or maybe a security escort?" "I can go in your place." Emily shook her head. "No, I'm going myself. This isn't a transaction. It's personal." The room went silent. It was rare for Emily to override process, but when she did, no one argued. She picked up Lucas's coat, still neatly folded in her arms, and tucked it into a messenger bag. The drawing of Noah remained in her wallet, close to her heart. She was ready. Later that afternoon, Emily called her driver and requested to be taken to the Bronx, but not in her usual black sedan. Instead, she asked for an unmarked car, something less conspicuous. She dressed simply: jeans, sneakers, a warm jacket. She wanted to be seen not as a CEO descending from her tower, but as a woman seeking connection. As the car moved away from the polished skyline and into the gritty rhythm of the outer boroughs, Emily stared out the window, heart pounding. She wasn't afraid, just deeply aware that this moment could change everything. They arrived near an old parking lot behind a hardware store. The air smelled of rust and cold oil. Parked under a broken streetlight was a dented pickup truck green, with a cracked side mirror and faded bumper stickers. Emily's driver hesitated. "That's the one," she said softly. She stepped out of the car, ignoring the sting of the cold, and approached slowly. Her footsteps echoed faintly. The closer she got, the more surreal it felt. Inside, through the fogged window, she saw a figure curled in the back seat. A man wrapped in blankets, clutching something close to his chest. She stood by the truck, in silence, unsure how to begin. Should she knock? Call out his name? Before she could decide, the man stirred. Lucas slowly sat up, blinking away sleep, his eyes adjusting to the dim afternoon light. When he saw her, confusion crossed his face. He pushed open the truck door halfway and looked at her warily. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice raspy from the cold. Emily stepped back slightly, hands visible, voice calm. "Hi, Lucas. I'm Emily. We met the other night. You gave me your coat." His expression shifted, recognition flickered in his eyes. Lucas looked down, almost embarrassed. "Did I leave something in it?" he asked, already reaching for a pocket in his shirt. Emily shook her head. "No, you gave me more than you know." She reached into her bag and carefully pulled out the coat. "I came to return this, but also to thank you." Lucas stepped out of the truck now, slowly, still unsure what to make of the situation. "You came all the way here to return a coat?" There was no sarcasm in his tone, just disbelief. She nodded. "Because that coat reminded me who I am, and who I want to be." They stood in silence for a few long seconds. Around them, the city buzzed with distant sirens and traffic. But here, between the truck and the broken pavement, time seemed suspended. Emily smiled gently. "I'm not here to fix your life. I'm just hoping for a conversation. Maybe some coffee?" Lucas looked at her with a cautious gaze. He had seen many kinds of people on the streets, some curious, some judgmental, others pretending to care. But Emily's eyes held none of that, only sincerity. After a pause, he nodded. "Okay, coffee sounds nice." They found a small diner a few blocks away, the kind with flickering neon signs and formica tables that hadn't changed in decades. Lucas ordered black coffee. Emily did the same. At first, they spoke about nothing: weather, city noise, favorite bagels. But as the cups emptied, the conversation deepened. Emily shared her story, her childhood, the man who once gave her a coat. Lucas listened quietly, absorbing every word. When she told him about the drawing, about how it had broken something open inside her, he went still. "That was Noah's," he whispered, "my son." That one sentence, "my son," hung in the air like a prayer. Emily reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "I'd like to help, Lucas, but not out of pity, out of purpose. You reminded me that kindness still matters, and I want to learn from people like you." Lucas didn't speak for a while. Then he nodded, slowly. Not a yes, not a no. Just a beginning. And in that small, old diner, something invisible began to shift. A new chapter, still unnamed, started to take shape, rooted in an act of compassion, and now in the possibility of something more. A week had passed since their first real conversation, and Lucas still wasn't sure if it had been real. The coffee, the warmth of the diner, the way Emily had listened not with pity, but with presence, it all felt like a scene from a different life. He hadn't expected her to follow up. People said things all the time, but rarely meant them. Yet here he was, standing on the steps of the Infinity Group's headquarters, invited by Emily herself. The glass facade towered above him, sleek and modern. He glanced at his reflection, straightened his shirt, and took a breath inside. Everything gleamed: marble floors, steel fixtures, minimalist decor. Lucas felt out of place immediately. Receptionists wore headsets and smiled with rehearsed precision. No one looked like him. And yet, the moment he stepped in, someone approached with a smile and a clipboard. "Mr. Lucas Reed?" she asked. He nodded, heart pounding. "Right this way, sir." As they walked, he felt dozens of eyes. Glance at him, then glance away. He couldn't tell if it was curiosity or discomfort. He reminded himself of Emily's words, "You belong anywhere kindness does." He held on to that as they entered the elevator. When the doors opened, Emily was already waiting. She wore no blazer today, no power heels, just a soft sweater. and jeans. Casual, approachable, real. "Hi, Lucas," she said warmly. "I'm really glad you came." He offered a tentative smile. "I almost didn't." She nodded. "I figured. But I'm glad you did." She led him through a side hallway, away from the open-plan offices and glass-walled conference rooms, until they reached a quiet rooftop garden. The city buzzed below, but up here it felt still. "I come here to think," she said. "And I wanted you to see it." They sat on a wooden bench surrounded by planters, filled with rosemary and lavender. Emily didn't dive into business or pleasantries. Instead, she asked, "How's your week been?" It was such a simple question, but it hit Lucas unexpectedly. When was the last time someone had asked that and waited for a real answer? He told her about the library, about a small job fixing plumbing at the shelter, about how he'd shaved that morning just in case. She laughed gently. "You look great." He blushed, brushing it off, but inside, something cracked open, something soft and human. Emily eventually leaned forward. "I didn't bring you here just for the view," she said. "I wanted to ask if you'd come back. Not just today, but again." Lucas looked confused. "Back here? Why?" She paused. "Because I think you have something this place desperately needs. A voice that isn't polished, but powerful. A way of seeing people that we've forgotten." Lucas looked away, unsure. "Emily, I'm not one of your executives. I don't even have a stable address." She shook her head. "That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who remind us what really matters." There was silence between them. Wind rustled through the leaves. Far below, a car horn blared. Lucas stared at the city skyline, trying to process her words. "You really think people here would listen to me?" he asked. Emily nodded slowly. "I think they need to. You showed me something I had forgotten, and if it changed me, it can change others." Lucas hesitated. He wasn't used to being seen this way, not as a problem to be fixed, but as someone who could offer value. It was a strange feeling, like stepping into sunlight after years in the dark. Emily stood up and handed him a simple folder. No contracts, no expectations. Just think about it. Come speak to the team next week. Tell your story. That's it. No pressure. Lucas held the folder as if it might vanish. Inside was a basic outline. Lunch talk series, guest speaker, Lucas Reed. No title, no labels. Just his name. "They already know about you," she added with a smile. The coach stories spread like wildfire. Some even keep drawings in their desks now to remind them why they started. Lucas blinked. "Wait, they know?" She nodded. "You're already changing things." Asterisk as they walked back through the building, something had shifted. The same stairs from earlier now felt different. Some people nodded. A few smiled. One young woman mouthed, "Thank you," as they passed. Lucas wasn't sure what he had become to these people. An idea, maybe. A reminder. It scared him, but also gave him hope. When they reached the lobby again, Emily stopped him. "No matter what you decide, this door stays open." He nodded. "Okay." But even as he walked away, he knew deep down, this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning he never saw coming. Back in his truck, Lucas sat in silence for a long time. He reread the folder twice. He looked at Noah's photo on the dashboard. For years, he had been surviving. But now, for the first time in a long while, he was considering the possibility of living. What if this wasn't just charity? What if this was purpose? Could he really help shape the culture of a company? Could he find his place again, not as a man with nothing, but as someone who gave something no one else could? He didn't know. But for once, he wanted to find out. Asterisk that night, Lucas wrote another letter to Noah. This one felt different, hopeful. "Today," he wrote, "a door opened. I don't know where it leads, but it feels like the start of something good. I hope one day I can show you all of this, and I hope you'll be proud. I'm trying, son. I'm really trying." He folded the letter, added it to the shoebox under the seat, and leaned back. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware. But inside that old truck, something powerful was unfolding. A second chance had arrived, and this time, Lucas was ready to walk through it. Lucas returned the following week, not as a guest, but as a participant. The lunch talk was modest 20 people seated casually in a sunlit room with glass walls. He stood in front of them, nervous, with no slides or notes, just his voice. His truth. He told them about Sarah, about Noah, about the truck he called home, and the drawing that still kept him warm on the coldest nights. He spoke not as a victim, but as a man who had seen how life could break you, and how you could still choose to build again. There was no applause when he finished, just silence. A good silence. The kind that means people are processing something deep. Then, one by one, people began to speak. A young analyst said his father had gone through something similar. A team lead admitted she hadn't felt connected to the company's purpose in years, until now. Someone cried. Someone else said, "Thank you." And in that room, Lucas felt something he hadn't in a long time. He mattered. Not because he had money, not because he was perfect, but because his story had touched something universal in them. Emily watched from the corner, arms crossed, eyes bright. She didn't need to convince anyone anymore. Lucas had done what she hoped. He reminded them all of their humanity. That same afternoon, she asked him to stay for a private meeting. They sat in her office, overlooking the city skyline. "I've been thinking," she said. "You said something earlier about dignity, about rebuilding from nothing, and I realized we don't have anyone here who knows that better than you. Not in theory, in practice." Lucas looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" She smiled. "I want to offer you a job." Lucas blinked, unsure if he heard her right. "A job?" She nodded. "Yes, a real one. One that pays, one with benefits, one with purpose. I want you to join us not as a janitor, not as a consultant, but as something new. A title we've never had before. Advisor of Human Values and Culture." Lucas stared at her, overwhelmed. I don't even have a degree anymore. My certifications are expired. I haven't worked in an office in years." Emily leaned forward. "I'm not hiring you for your credentials. I'm hiring you because of who you are. That's rarer than any diploma." Lucas stood up, needing to pace. His mind raced with doubts. Could he really walk these halls every day? Would people respect him or pity him? What if he failed? What if he didn't belong? He looked at Emily, trying to read her face, but she wasn't selling him anything. She was simply inviting him. "I don't want you to change," she said. "I want you to be exactly who you are. That's why this role exists. Not to fix people, but to remind them they were never broken." He sat back down quiet. "I don't know if I can do that." Emily nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to decide today. But just know this role, this space, it's yours, if you want it. Take your time." She slid a simple folder across the desk. No flashy branding. Just a job description written in plain language. Lucas didn't open it. He was too focused on breathing, on staying grounded. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't chased it. But somehow, his act of kindness had opened a path he never imagined. And that was the scariest part. It felt too good to be real. But it was real. And that terrified him. Later that evening, Lucas sat on a park bench overlooking the Hudson River, the city lights flickering in the water. He had the folder in his lap. He finally opened it. Inside was a letter from Emily, handwritten. "This is not about saving you," it read. You already did that for yourself. This is about making room for you to help others. What you said the other day about dignity being a choice, that's the kind of leadership we need. No jargon, just truth. We'll walk at your pace. Lucas folded the letter carefully. He didn't cry, but his eyes shimmered. He thought about Noah, about the future. What would it mean to tell his son he had a job again? Not just any job, but one where he was respected, where he had a desk, a nameplate, maybe even a badge. Would Noah believe him? Would he be proud? Lucas didn't have the answers. But for the first time in years, the questions didn't feel like weights. They felt like windows. Windows into a life he might still be able to build. One choice at a time, one day at a time. And maybe, just maybe, one purpose at a time. The next morning, Lucas returned to the office. He wore the same clean shirt, the same old shoes, but his stride was different. Emily met him in the lobby, not with a handshake, but a hug. "Welcome back," she said. "Does this mean yes?" Lucas looked around the space, then at her. "It means I'm willing to try." That was enough. That was everything. She handed him a simple lanyard. No corporate ID photo, yet just a blank space with the words, "Advisor L. Reed." Lucas held it in his hand, and for the first time, smiled without hesitation. Lucas's first day wasn't a grand event. He didn't walk into applause or stand on a stage. He sat with a few employees over coffee. He listened. He asked questions. He shared little pieces of his story. And slowly, something began to ripple through the office. Conversations deepened. People lingered a little longer. Emails came with gentler tones. Lucas didn't lecture. He just reminded people what they already knew. Kindness matters. Every day, in quiet ways, he began to help rebuild not just his life, but the culture around him. One story at a time. One human moment at a time. Emily had always been composed, controlled. Her power came from structured, carefully measured words, sharp decisions, predictable routines. But something about Lucas's presence unsettled that control in the best way. He carried truth like a quiet torch, and now that she had invited him into her world, she knew she owed him something in return. Vulnerability. One afternoon, she asked him to take a ride with her. No explanation, no destination. Lucas hesitated, but nodded. She drove herself, no driver, no security. Just the two of them, and the sound of the city passing by. They left Manhattan and crossed into Harlem, weaving through neighborhoods that were once her whole world. "I haven't been back here in years," Emily said, her voice softer than usual. Lucas watched her hands on the wheel steady, but tense. "You grew up here?" he asked. She nodded. "In and out of group homes. This street," she pointed. "That's where I used to sit on the steps and dream of having my own place. Not a mansion, just something mine." Lucas didn't speak. He knew that tone, the sound of someone peeling back carefully hidden history. They turned down a side road and pulled into a small lot behind an old brick building. It was modest 3 stories, faded paint, narrow windows. But above the door, freshly painted in blue, was a sign, "Thomas's Place." Lucas tilted his head. "What is this?" Emily smiled faintly. "A community center. I opened it 10 years ago. Named after the man who gave me his coat when I was a kid, the one I told you about." They walked toward the entrance, and Lucas noticed murals on the walls, smiling children, hands holding hearts, messages like, "You are not invisible." Inside, the place pulsed with quiet life. Children coloring on the floor. Volunteers preparing snacks. A small library in the corner with books donated by local families. Emily walked slowly, letting Lucas take it all in. "When I made it out," she said, "I promised I'd build something that made other kids feel safe. Not fixed, just seen. Lucas touched a drawing pinned to a corkboard. It reminded him of Noah's artwork. "You really kept that promise," he said quietly. Emily looked at him. "I tried. But somewhere along the way, I got lost in skyscrapers and spreadsheets." Asterisk, she led him to a quiet room in the back. It looked like a mini museum. Framed letters, photos of volunteers, and on a pedestal, behind glass, was a faded coat, old, fraying at the sleeves. "That's the one," she whispered. "He just draped it over me and walked away. I never forgot it. And when you gave me yours, it was like the universe was reminding me of my beginning." Lucas stared at the display. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. "You kept his coat," he said. Emily nodded. "Because it gave me more than warmth. It gave me direction." They sat down at a nearby bench, the hum of children's voices drifting through the hallways. Emily looked at Lucas, her tone steady but emotional. "You reminded me who I used to be, before I had a corner office, before my name was on Forbes lists. You showed me that kindness isn't a tactic, it's a language. And I want to speak it better again." Lucas didn't know what to say. He had seen people cry, break, scream, but this quiet confession from a woman so powerful felt sacred. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, the way she once listened to him. "I built all this," Emily said, gesturing around them. "But for a long time, I stopped visiting. I told myself I was too busy, too important, but really ... I was scared. Scared that I'd become someone the younger me wouldn't recognize." Lucas replied gently, "We all get lost, but not everyone finds their way back." She smiled, wiping a tear. "I think I'm starting to." They sat for a while in silence, not needing to fill the air with words. Sometimes healing doesn't come through dialogue, it comes through presence, through simply being in the right place with the right person. As they got up to leave, Emily handed Lucas a laminated badge. It had the Thomas's Place logo on it and his name underneath, Community Mentor. "In case you ever want to speak here," she said, "or just come by and sit. You belong here as much as I do." Lucas took the badge slowly, his thumb brushing over the embossed letters. He had no idea what the future would hold, but this felt like an anchor, a place to return to, a symbol that he was no longer drifting, but grounding step by step. On the drive back, they didn't say much, but Emily reached into the glove box and pulled out a small Polaroid photo. It showed a young girl on a stoop with a man behind her, blurry but smiling. "That's Thomas," she said. "I've only got one photo of him. Someone from the shelter took it that night. I keep it close." Lucas studied the image. There was something timeless about the man's kindness, an echo of what he had done for her, and what she now offered to him, a chain of compassion stretching across decades. By the time they reached the city, the skyline looked different to Lucas, less distant, less untouchable. Emily parked the car and turned to him. "I brought you here not just to show you my past, but to show you why you matter here. You reminded me of someone I never wanted to forget." Lucas nodded slowly. "And you reminded me that maybe I'm not finished yet." They stepped out of the car side by side. Two lives, once worlds apart, now walking together on a path built not of status or wealth, but of shared memory and renewed purpose. Lucas stepped into the Infinity Group office the next morning with a new sense of purpose. Though the polished floors and sleek design still felt foreign, he no longer felt invisible. People greeted him with nods and smiles. Some paused to ask how he was doing. It was a subtle change from the usual stares he used to receive. As he moved through the open-plan space, he noticed employees whispering, exchanging glances that weren't of pity, but curiosity and respect. The environment was shifting, and he was beginning to realize he was part of that change. His first official day, as advisor of human values and culture was quiet but meaningful. Emily had set up a small, informal gathering where he could share his story with the core team. No scripts, no rehearsals, just Lucas speaking from the heart. He talked about the nights on the street, the loss of his family, the small moments of kindness that had kept him going. But more than that, he spoke about hope, resilience, and the power of empathy. The team listened in rapt silence, some nodding, others wiping away tears. This wasn't a lecture. It was a healing. Lucas's impact was not immediate, but it was profound. His words began to seep into daily conversations. Phrases like, "You're not broken, just tired," became mantras within meetings. Employees shared his story in hushed tones, finding inspiration in his vulnerability. He wasn't just advising policies. He was reshaping the company's soul. Managers started to prioritize mental health days. Teams organized volunteer work at local shelters. And even the tone of emails became warmer and more human. The culture was becoming less about numbers and more about people. Emily watched these changes with a quiet pride. She had seen many consultants come and go, but Lucas was different. He didn't offer quick fixes or motivational cliches. He brought authenticity, and that authenticity created ripples. One day, she found a handwritten note left on her desk. It read, "Thank you for reminding me why I started." It was unsigned, but Emily knew exactly who had written it. Small victories like this fueled her belief that true transformation was possible, even in a world driven by profits. Lucas also found new rhythm in his own life. The steady routine of office hours, meetings, and genuine conversations replaced the chaos he once knew. He no longer worried about where he would sleep or what meal was next. Instead, he focused on his mission, to be a living reminder of dignity, no matter the circumstances. He began mentoring younger employees struggling with burnout and personal hardships. He held small group sessions about resilience and compassion, creating safe spaces where people could be honest and vulnerable without fear. One afternoon, during a company-wide town hall, Lucas was invited to speak. Standing in front of hundreds of employees, he shared the story of his journey, the heartbreak, the kindness, and the unexpected new chapter. His voice was steady, eyes shining with conviction. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, not just for his courage, but for the hope he represented. Emily stood beside him, smiling. In that moment, the gap between their worlds had disappeared, bridged by mutual respect and shared humanity. The change wasn't only felt inside the office. Lucas's story began to circulate beyond the company walls, picked up by local media and social networks. The hashtag Kindness Matters trended as people shared their own experiences of small acts that changed lives. The Infinity Group became known not just as a tech giant, but as a company with heart, one that valued its people as much as its profits. Emily and Lucas were invited to speak at conferences, inspiring others to reconsider what workplace culture could be. Yet, despite the growing attention, Lucas remained humble. He still visited Thomas's place regularly, volunteering and mentoring children who reminded him of himself. His home life was also beginning to heal. With the company's support, he found a modest apartment in Brooklyn. Slowly but surely, he reconnected with Noah, who had returned to live with him while attending college. Their bond strengthened with each shared meal, each conversation about dreams and struggles. For Lucas, this was the real transformation, the rebuilding of a family. One evening, as Lucas and Noah sat watching the sunset over the Brooklyn Bridge, Lucas reflected on how far he had come. From cold streets to warm offices, from isolation to connection. He thought about Emily and the coat she still kept framed in her office, a symbol of kindness that had ignited this entire journey. He realized that transformation wasn't a single moment, but a series of choices of kindness given and received, of trust rebuilt, of hope reclaimed. It was messy, uncertain, and beautiful. As the city lights flickered on and the night settled, Lucas felt a profound gratitude. He was no longer defined by what he had lost, but by what he was becoming. The man who once handed over his coat in a moment of need had now become a beacon of compassion in a world that desperately needed it. And with each passing day, he lived not just for himself, but for those who still needed to believe that even in darkness, kindness could rewrite a life. With a newfound stability, Lucas began the delicate process of rebuilding his personal life. The modest apartment in Brooklyn was a far cry from the cramped, cold nights spent in his truck, but it held something priceless: safety. Walls to call his own, a kitchen where meals could be cooked without worry, and space enough to breathe. More importantly, it was a home where Noah could come back. The idea of sharing a space with his son filled Lucas with both joy and apprehension. So much time had passed since they were last truly close. Noah arrived cautiously, his college textbooks in hand and uncertainty in his eyes. The first days were quiet, the two of them feeling their way through the silence that had grown between them over the years. They ate simple meals, watched late-night shows, and tried to find common ground. Lucas was patient, knowing that healing didn't come overnight. Every small conversation was a victory, every shared smile a step toward mending what had been broken. Both carried scars, but the walls that once divided them began to crumble. Lucas made a promise to himself and to Noah that he would never let instability define their relationship again. He started attending college meetings and parent-teacher conferences, even if Noah's classes were mostly online. He learned about the pressures his son faced and began to offer support, not judgment. Slowly, Noah opened up about his dreams and fears, and Lucas listened without interruption. Their conversations went deeper than just academics or logistics. They talked about life, resilience, and hope. Lucas also introduced Noah to Thomas's place, where the community center had become a second home for both. Noah was hesitant at first, unsure of how he fit into the world his father was now building. But as he saw the children laughing, the volunteers working passionately, and his father speaking with a confidence he hadn't seen before, Noah began to understand. He joined volunteer efforts and even helped organize an event celebrating kindness. It was a new bond, forged not just in blood, but in shared purpose. Financially, life was still tight, but manageable. The job with Infinity Group provided steady income and benefits, which meant Lucas could plan for the future rather than just survive day to day. He took evening classes to improve his skills and started saving with the goal of buying a larger home for Noah's college years. Every small deposit into their joint account felt like a victory. He wanted his son to know that life could get better, that stability wasn't a dream, but a possibility within reach. Despite the progress, Lucas never forgot the nights he spent on the streets, the cold that pierced his bones, or the loneliness that threatened to consume him. Those memories were a part of him, shadows that reminded him of how fragile life can be. But instead of being weighed down by them, he used those memories as fuel to keep moving forward. He spoke openly about his past during company sessions and community talks, hoping to inspire others who felt trapped by their circumstances. Noah noticed the change too. His father was no longer just a man struggling to survive. He was a man who had found purpose and was fighting to keep it. Noah began to ask questions about the company, about Thomas's place, about the people who had helped them. It was clear that the son who once felt lost was beginning to see a future, one where family, kindness, and perseverance were more than just words, but the foundation of their lives. There were difficult days, of course. Moments when old wounds reopened, when frustration and fear threatened to pull them back into old patterns. But Lucas and Noah faced these challenges together. They learned to communicate better, to be honest about their feelings, and to forgive themselves and each other. The process was slow and imperfect, but it was theirs. Every step forward was a testament to their commitment to rebuild, not just a house or a job, but their family. Lucas's relationship with Emily, though still discreet, became a quiet source of strength. She encouraged him to keep focusing on healing, reminding him that vulnerability was not weakness, but power. They shared lunches, coffee breaks, and eventually weekends moments where life beyond work and survival felt possible. Their bond grew organically, rooted in mutual respect and shared values. For Lucas, it was proof that second chances could come in many forms. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. Lucas watched Noah graduate from his first semester with pride, knowing the journey had been long and hard. The apartment that once felt cramped now echoed with laughter and hope. Lucas understood that rebuilding a life wasn't about erasing the past, but integrating it, turning pain into purpose, loss into love. And in this new chapter, he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living fully and authentically, with family by his side and a heart open to whatever came next. What started as simple, polite conversations soon blossomed into moments neither Lucas nor Emily expected. At first, it was the small things: sharing lunch breaks, a casual text to check in, or a quick coffee after meetings. Each interaction carried an undercurrent of warmth and curiosity, something deeper than professional courtesy. Both were cautiously wary from years of hardship and loss. She, mindful of her position and past guardedness. Yet the connection grew quietly, like a fragile seed pushing through the soil. Lucas found himself looking forward to their meetings, not just for work, but for the chance to glimpse Emily's softer side. She shared stories from her childhood, laughed at moments of clumsiness, and confided fears she rarely voiced. Emily, in turn, saw in Lucas a grounded strength that no boardroom power could replicate. He reminded her what it meant to be human beyond titles and success. They were two souls healing together, learning to trust again in a world that often seemed unforgiving. Weekends became sacred. They would meet in quiet cafes or take walks through Brooklyn's tree-lined streets. These moments, simple yet profound, allowed them to shed the layers of their public personas. Under the open sky, conversations turned personal dreams shared, vulnerabilities exposed. Emily once admitted how lonely her climb to the top had felt, while Lucas spoke candidly about his fears of never fully escaping his past. In those moments, the walls between them crumbled. One evening, under the glow of string lights on Emily's rooftop, the city buzzing softly below, the conversation shifted. Emily looked at Lucas with a quiet intensity. "You changed this place," she said, voice low. Lucas smiled, shaking his head. "I just reminded them of what they already knew." The moment hung between them weighty, charged. It was more than gratitude. It was a recognition of something profound growing between them, delicate yet undeniable. Their relationship remained discreet, a gentle secret shared between two hearts cautiously opening. They respected boundaries, aware of the complexities that a romance could bring. Yet, in private, their affection grew palpable. Hand-holding became brushing fingers. Shared glances became lingering looks. The office, a place once foreign and intimidating to Lucas, now held warmth because of her presence. And Emily found in him a sanctuary from the pressures of her role. Friends and colleagues began to notice subtle changes. Emily seemed more at ease, her laughter more frequent. Lucas carried himself with newfound confidence, the weight of isolation lifting. At company events, they were seen together, exchanging smiles that spoke volumes. Though neither rushed or forced anything, their closeness inspired others. It was a love not shouted from rooftops, but woven quietly into daily life, a testament to healing and hope. As seasons changed, so did their bond. They celebrated small milestones, a birthday dinner, a shared holiday, quiet mornings with coffee and conversation. They navigated challenges with openness, building trust brick by brick. Emily introduced Lucas to her world outside the office, and Lucas shared with her the community at Thomas's place and the fragile beauty of rebuilding a family. Their lives intertwined, complementing and strengthening one another. Then came the day they both realized this was no longer just a friendship, but something deeper, something enduring. They found themselves envisioning a future, not one defined by past losses, but by shared dreams. On a cool spring evening, as cherry blossoms drifted through the air, Lucas took Emily's hand and whispered, "You've saved more than this company. You saved me." Tears shimmered in her eyes, and for the first time, she let herself believe in love again. Their intimacy grew naturally, without haste or pressure. They shared quiet nights, cooking dinner, reading side by side, and planning weekend getaways. Emily taught Lucas to relax into joy. Lucas reminded Emily of the beauty in vulnerability. Together, they crafted a space where love was safe, tender, and nourishing. It was a slow bloom, rich and lasting far from the fleeting romances of their pasts. In that delicate dance of hearts, Lucas and Emily found a new beginning. Their love was not just a personal triumph, but a symbol of hope for everyone around them. A reminder that even after the darkest storms, connection, kindness, and love can grow. And as they stood together on that rooftop, city lights twinkling around them, they knew they were no longer just survivors. They were partners, ready to face whatever came next together. Lucas's presence at Infinity Group soon began to ripple far beyond the walls of the office. It wasn't just his official role or the inspiring speeches that moved people. It was the way he embodied genuine empathy and humility in every interaction. One afternoon, a young employee named Mia approached him hesitantly after a meeting. She was known as a high performer, but had recently been distant, overwhelmed by stress and personal struggles. With a shaky voice, she confessed that she had been considering quitting, feeling invisible and hopeless. Lucas listened intently, his eyes full of understanding. He shared stories of his darkest moments, how he had once stood where she was on the edge, unsure if life was worth continuing. But he reminded her gently that being vulnerable was a sign of strength, not weakness, and that reaching out was the first step toward healing. Mia's eyes welled with tears, relief washing over her like a wave. That conversation didn't just save a job. It saved a life, reigniting her hope and resolve. The story of that conversation spread quietly but powerfully through the company's grapevine. Others began to see Lucas not only as a symbol, but as a safe harbor, someone who truly cared and who understood the unseen battles many faced daily. Employees who had hidden their struggles found courage to seek help, and managers became more attentive to their team's well-being. Mental health resources gained new visibility, and new peer support groups were formed, all inspired by Lucas's openness. The culture shifted subtly, but meaningfully, from one driven purely by performance metrics to one grounded in humanity. People started looking out for one another, checking in, listening with intention. Small acts of kindness became the new currency, transforming the workplace into a community. Lucas's influence also reached beyond Infinity Group. The local news picked up his story after the One Kindness Day event, and soon he was invited to speak at schools, nonprofits, and business conferences. In these appearances, Lucas didn't just recount his past hardships. He spoke about resilience, the power of compassion, and the radical impact of simple kindness. Audiences were captivated by his authenticity, a man who had walked through darkness and emerged with a message that felt both urgent and hopeful. Letters and messages poured in from people touched by his words, some sharing their own struggles, others inspired to create kindness initiatives in their own communities. Lucas had become a beacon, proof that even the smallest gestures could change lives. Inside the office, One young intern, Javier, confided in Lucas one afternoon. Javier was bright, but battling severe anxiety and feelings of inadequacy. He admitted he had once contemplated giving up on his dreams. Lucas sat with him, sharing how he too had faced moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing. But Lucas urged him to hold on, to find strength in small daily victories, and to remember that his worth wasn't defined by success alone. Javier left that conversation transformed, his outlook renewed. Over time, he blossomed into a confident and engaged member of the team, often volunteering to lead initiatives that promoted mental health awareness. Moments like these underscored to Lucas the profound ripple effect of empathy. It was a legacy far greater than any corporate achievement. The impact wasn't limited to individuals. It reshaped the company's identity. Employees began to share their own stories at meetings and on internal platforms, creating an environment where vulnerability was welcomed, not feared. Annual reviews incorporated discussions on personal well-being alongside professional goals. Leadership training shifted focus to emotional intelligence and active listening. Productivity improved not just through efficiency, but because people felt valued and understood. The phrase, "You're not broken, just tired," became an informal motto, whispered in moments of stress or doubt, reminding everyone of the shared humanity beneath the professional facades. One of the most touching moments came during a company retreat. As the group gathered around a campfire under the stars, employees shared stories of personal challenges and triumphs. Lucas listened quietly, moved by the courage of his colleagues. When it was his turn, he spoke softly about his journey from homelessness to healing, crediting kindness as the catalyst. As he finished, the group erupted in applause, but more than that, there was a palpable sense of unity, a community forged through shared stories and compassion. This retreat wasn't just a team-building exercise. It was a collective affirmation that kindness and empathy were at the core of their success. Lucas also began collaborating with the HR team to design wellness programs tailored to the company's evolving culture. Workshops on mindfulness, stress management, and emotional resilience were introduced, all grounded in the belief that caring for the whole person benefits everyone. These initiatives received enthusiastic participation, with employees reporting greater satisfaction and decreased burnout. Testimonials highlighted the transformative power of these programs, crediting Lucas's influence as a key factor. It was a shift that rippled beyond policy. It became a movement. At Thomas's place, Lucas's dual life intertwined beautifully. He invited colleagues to volunteer alongside him, bridging the corporate world and the community. Employees who once saw charity as a checkbox began to experience it as a calling. These shared experiences deepened bonds, fostered empathy, and reinforced the company's renewed mission. Stories of these volunteer days of laughter, shared meals, and heartfelt conversations circulated internally, inspiring more to join. For Lucas, this blending of worlds was a dream realized, building bridges where once there were walls. The true testament to Lucas's impact came from those whose lives he quietly transformed. Former employees, interns, and community members reached out to thank him for reminding them of their worth and for giving them tools to cope with adversity. These messages were a constant source of motivation and humility. Lucas never sought recognition. His reward was knowing that his story could light a spark in someone else's darkness. Every thank you was a reminder that kindness, when sincere, ripples outward, touching lives in ways unseen but deeply felt. As Lucas reflected on this journey, he realized that his greatest achievement wasn't the job title or the speeches, but the lives changed through simple human connection. His story, once marked by loss and loneliness, had become a testament to hope and resilience. Through his presence, Infinity Group had transformed into more than a company. It was a community where people cared deeply, worked passionately, and believed in the power of kindness to rewrite lives. Lucas's legacy was clear. One small act of kindness could ignite change far greater than any one person could imagine. The day of the One Kindness Day event dawned bright and full of anticipation. Infinity Group's headquarters buzzed with energy as employees, volunteers, and community members gathered to celebrate the transformative power of compassion. Banners with inspiring quotes fluttered gently in the spring breeze, and the scent of fresh flowers mingled with the hum of excited chatter. The event was more than a corporate celebration. It was a heartfelt tribute to the small acts that had created a ripple of hope throughout the company and beyond. Emily stood backstage, rehearsing her speech, but her thoughts were with Lucas, the man whose simple coat had sparked it all. As the event began, videos played showcasing stories of kindness from employees and the community. Faces lit up, the giant screen smiles of children at Thomas's place, volunteers distributing meals, employees supporting one another through tough times. The audience watched, captivated, tears glistening in many eyes. When Lucas's story appeared, narrated by Emily, a hush fell over the crowd. Images of his journey from hardship to hope filled the screen, each frame a testament to resilience and the profound impact of empathy. The atmosphere was electric, charged with gratitude and the promise of change. When Emily took the stage to speak, her voice carried the weight of authenticity and emotion. She recounted the cold night when Lucas had given her his coat, a moment that had rekindled her own empathy and changed the course of her life. One small act of kindness can rewrite a life, she declared, her eyes scanning the crowd. She spoke of the company's journey from profit-driven to purpose-driven, crediting Lucas's presence as the catalyst. The audience erupted in applause, many rising to their feet in a standing ovation. It was a celebration of humanity as much as achievement. And came the moment that moved everyone deeply. Emily unveiled a framed display of the very coat Lucas had given her months ago, encased in glass, with a simple plaque that read, "One small act of kindness can rewrite a life." It was a powerful symbol of hope, resilience, and transformation. Emily called Lucas to the stage, her voice steady but emotional. She presented him with the deed to a modest home in Brooklyn, a gift from the company, a tangible promise that he would never have to face the cold streets again. The crowd cheered as Lucas, overwhelmed, accepted the keys, tears streaming down his face. The event continued with testimonials from employees who shared how Lucas's story had inspired them to act with greater kindness and empathy. A young woman spoke of how Lucas's words saved her from giving up during a difficult time. Another shared how she started a support group after attending one of his talks. Each story added layers to the tapestry of transformation that had woven itself through the company's culture. The day was a collective recognition, not just of Lucas, but of every small act of kindness that had contributed to a greater good. Outside, news crews captured the celebration, broadcasting it across social media and local news channels. The story resonated deeply with viewers, sparking conversations about the power of compassion in corporate culture and beyond. Messages poured in from around the world, with people inspired to start their own kindness initiatives. Infinity Group's event had become a beacon, illustrating that success and humanity were not mutually exclusive, but deeply intertwined. For Lucas and Emily, it was validation that their journey had touched lives far beyond their own. In the weeks that followed, Lucas settled into his new home, surrounded by warmth and security. Noah had moved in, their bond stronger than ever. The house was modest, but filled with love photos, books, and reminders of their journey. The keys Emily had given him symbolized more than a physical space. They represented a fresh start, a second chance, and the power of community. Lucas often paused to reflect on how a single act of kindness had altered the course of his life, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond what he ever imagined. At work, Lucas continued his mission with renewed vigor. His role expanded to include mentoring and outreach programs, ensuring that kindness remained at the heart of Infinity Group's culture. Emily supported him steadfastly, their partnership growing stronger both professionally and personally. Together, they championed initiatives that prioritized mental health, community engagement, and authentic leadership. The legacy of the coat and the story it carried became a foundational part of the company's identity, inspiring future generations to lead with empathy. The framed coat hung prominently in the company's main lobby, visible to every employee and visitor. It served as a daily reminder that greatness was not measured by wealth or status, but by the capacity to show kindness and to uplift others. Employees often paused before it, drawing inspiration and recommitting to the values Lucas embodied. The story behind the coat was shared during new hire orientations, becoming a core narrative that defined Infinity Group's mission. It was a symbol that reminded everyone that even the smallest gesture could ignite profound change. As the sun set on one kindness day, Emily and Lucas stood together, hand in hand, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. They knew the road ahead would have challenges, but they also knew that kindness would continue to guide them. Their story was no longer just about two people. It was a legacy, a movement. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of community and the glow of hope, they understood that sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness to rewrite a life, and in doing so, rewrite the world. The celebration at Infinity Group was still pulsing with energy when Lucas felt a sudden, unmistakable urge to speak his heart. Surrounded by colleagues, friends, and the community that had embraced his story, he knew this was the moment to step beyond gratitude and share something deeply personal. Quietly, he reached into the pocket of his coat, the same coat that had sparked their journey, and pulled out a small, weathered box. The room's lively chatter faded as curious eyes turned toward him, sensing something important was about to happen. Kneeling before Emily, Lucas's voice trembled slightly, but carried unwavering sincerity. "If this coat changed your life," he began, "then you have changed mine." His eyes locked with hers, shining with a mixture of hope, vulnerability, and love. The crowd held their breath as he opened the box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring, a symbol of a promise, a future, and a shared journey. In that moment, time seemed to pause, the hum of celebration turning into a sacred silence filled with anticipation. Emily's eyes filled with tears, her breath catching as she processed the weight of his words. The proposal wasn't just about marriage, it was an acknowledgement of the profound transformation they had undergone together. It was a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the power of kindness to heal even the deepest wounds. Slowly, she nodded, a radiant smile breaking through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "1,000 times yes." The room erupted into applause, cheers echoing through the hall. Their colleagues surrounded them, enveloping the couple in hugs and congratulations. For many, it was a beautiful culmination of a story that had inspired and touched their hearts. Lucas and Emily stood together, hands entwined, a quiet joy settling between them that no words could fully capture. This wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a beacon of hope for everyone who believed that love could emerge from pain, and that second chances were real. The proposal quickly became the heartwarming headline of the company newsletter and social media channels. Employees shared their excitement and admiration, celebrating the couple's courage to embrace love amidst life's complexities. The story reminded everyone that vulnerability and strength are intertwined, and that true connection comes from authenticity. Lucas and Emily's journey resonated far beyond their immediate circle. inspiring others to open their hearts and embrace the possibilities of love and healing. In private moments after the proposal, Lucas and Emily reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a cold night with a shared coat to a warm home filled with hope and new beginnings, their story was a testament to the transformative power of kindness. They spoke openly about their fears and dreams, about the challenges they had faced and the future they were building. Their love was rooted in shared experience, mutual respect, and a deep understanding that life's greatest gifts often arise from the most unexpected places. As wedding plans slowly began to take shape, the couple remained grounded in their values. They chose simplicity and meaning over extravagance, deciding to celebrate in a way that honored their journey and the community that had supported them. Invitations were sent not just to family and friends, but also to those whose lives had intersected with theirs at Thomas's Place and Infinity Group. The wedding was envisioned as a gathering of hearts united by compassion, resilience, and hope. Lucas took time to reconnect with Noah during this period, inviting him to be an active part of the wedding preparations. Their relationship deepened as they shared laughter, stories, and moments of quiet reflection. Noah witnessed firsthand the love and commitment blossoming between his father and Emily, finding inspiration in their example of healing and growth. For Lucas, involving Noah was a way to rebuild not only a family, but also a legacy of love and kindness that could endure through generations. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, the couple balanced their busy lives with moments of intimacy and reflection. They spent evenings walking hand in hand through quiet city streets, sharing dreams of the future and savoring the peace they had found in each other's presence. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, anchored by trust, gratitude, and the shared knowledge that their love was born from both hardship and hope. On the eve of their wedding, Lucas and Emily stood together, looking out over the city, skyline from the rooftop where so much of their story had unfolded. The lights twinkled below like stars, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always light waiting to be found. Holding each other close, they whispered promises, not just for the day ahead, but for a lifetime of kindness, understanding, and unwavering love. Their journey was far from over, but together they were ready to face whatever came next hand in hand, hearts open and hope alive. The morning of the wedding arrived with a gentle warmth that seemed to echo the hope and joy in everyone's hearts. Thomas's Place, the community center that had become a sanctuary for so many, was transformed into a celebration of love and resilience. Simple decorations, wildflowers in mason jars, soft fairy lights, and hand-painted signs created an atmosphere both intimate and radiant. Friends, family, volunteers, and colleagues gathered, their faces glowing with smiles and anticipation. The space was alive with laughter and quiet conversations, all underpinned by a shared sense of gratitude for the journey that had led to this day. Lucas stood nervously by the entrance, adjusting his tie, but feeling far more grounded than he had imagined possible. Dressed simply but elegantly, he carried the weight of the past with him, not as a burden, but as a reminder of how far he had come. His eyes searched the crowd for familiar faces, finally resting on Noah, who gave him an encouraging nod. The moment was bittersweet, filled with the knowledge that every step had been hard-earned, every smile hard-won. Yet, beneath it all, there was a profound peace of feeling that this day marked not just a union, but a new beginning. Emily arrived shortly after, radiant in a simple yet stunning dress that reflected her natural grace and strength. As she walked down the aisle, surrounded by children from Thomas's Place and friends who had stood by her and Lucas through thick and thin, the room seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes locked with Lucas's, and in that instant, the noise of the world fell away. Their journey from a chance encounter on a cold night to this moment of celebration was written in the warmth of their gaze. The vows they exchanged were heartfelt and honest, speaking not only of love, but of shared struggles, growth, and unwavering support. The ceremony was filled with moments that spoke to the community they had built together. Children from Thomas's place presented handmade bouquets. Volunteers shared stories of hope and kindness. Noah gave a heartfelt reading about family and forgiveness. Each part of the ceremony reflected the authenticity and humanity that defined Lucas and Emily's relationship. There were tears and laughter, quiet reflections and joyful celebrations, each element woven together to create a tapestry of love, rooted in resilience and compassion. As the ceremony concluded, the guests gathered outside for a modest reception under the open sky. Tables were adorned with candles and flowers, and the scent of home-cooked meals filled the air. Music played softly, inviting conversation and connection. Lucas and Emily moved through the crowd, greeting guests with genuine warmth and gratitude. It was a celebration not of extravagance, but of presence, the presence of loved ones, of community, and of the kindness that had brought them all together. The atmosphere was electric with joy, yet tender with meaning. Throughout the evening, stories flowed freely of hardships overcome, of unexpected kindnesses, of the small moments that had changed lives. Lucas's journey was recounted again and again, each retelling a reminder that transformation was possible for anyone. Emily's leadership and compassion were celebrated, not just as a CEO, but as a woman who had never lost sight of empathy in the face of success. Their union was more than personal. It was symbolic, a beacon for others to believe in second chances and the power of love to heal. Noah, standing beside his father, felt a new sense of pride and belonging. The years of distance and struggle had given way to a renewed bond, strengthened by shared experience and hope. He watched as his parents danced their first dance, their movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring every second. The simple joy in their eyes was a testament to the resilience of family and the healing power of forgiveness. For Noah, this day was a celebration not just of marriage, but of restored trust and a future bright with possibility. As night deepened, the guests gathered around a bonfire, sharing songs and stories under a blanket of stars. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in their hearts, a collective gratitude for kindness that had rewritten so many lives. Emily and Lucas sat close, hands entwined, feeling the full circle of their journey. From the cold streets to the warmth of this moment, their path had been anything but easy. Yet here they were surrounded by love, hope, and a community that had embraced them completely. The wedding was not just a union of two people, but a celebration of the values that had brought them together: empathy, resilience, and the courage to hope. It was a reminder that love is not defined by grandeur, but by authenticity and presence. As the night wore on, the couple shared quiet moments away from the crowd, reflecting on the promises made and the future they would build. Together, they dreamed of expanding Thomas's place, creating more spaces of refuge and kindness for others who needed a second chance. When the last guest departed and the lights dimmed, Lucas and Emily stood hand in hand, looking out over the city skyline that had witnessed their journey. The stars above sparkled like the countless small acts of kindness that had paved their way. In that stillness, they understood that their story was far from over. It was a beginning, a testament to the power of compassion to heal, unite, and transform. Together, they stepped forward, ready to write the next chapter of their lives, filled with love, hope, and an unwavering commitment to kindness. In the weeks and months following their wedding, the story of Lucas and Emily became more than a goal. Personal journey, it evolved into a symbol of hope and transformation that inspired countless people. Photos of the couple standing beside the framed coat, smiling with genuine warmth, circulated widely across social media and news outlets. Their narrative was embraced as a powerful reminder that kindness, even in its smallest form, has the power to rewrite lives. The coat that once shielded Emily on a cold night had become a beacon, an emblem of resilience, compassion, and the extraordinary impact of human connection. At Infinity Group, the legacy Lucas helped build continued to flourish. The company's culture had shifted fundamentally, embracing empathy and humanity as core values alongside innovation and growth. New hires were welcomed with the story of Lucas's journey, and kindness initiatives became an integral part of the corporate mission. Employees regularly volunteered at Thomas's place, strengthening ties between the business and the community. The coat displayed in the lobby wasn't just a symbol, it was a daily inspiration, reminding everyone who passed by that true strength lies in compassion. Thomas's place, once a modest community center, expanded its reach under Emily and Lucas's guidance. They worked tirelessly to create new programs that supported homeless families, offered job training, and provided safe spaces for children. The center became a hub of hope and opportunity, a place where people could rebuild their lives with dignity. Lucas's story was woven into the fabric of the community, inspiring volunteers and beneficiaries alike to believe in second chances and the power of kindness. For Noah, the legacy was deeply personal. Growing up watching his father transform hardship into hope taught him invaluable lessons about resilience and the importance of empathy. As he pursued his college studies, Noah also became involved in community service, determined to carry forward the values instilled in him. His relationship with Lucas grew stronger, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. Together, they embodied the promise that family, love, and kindness can heal even the deepest wounds. Emily's leadership took on a new dimension as she integrated social responsibility more deeply into Infinity Group's mission. She championed initiatives that prioritized mental health, diversity, and inclusion, ensuring that the company's success was measured not only in profits, but in positive impact. Her partnership with Lucas was a testament to how business and humanity could coexist harmoniously. Together, they showed that true leadership requires heart as much as vision. The framed coat continued to inspire beyond the walls of Infinity Group. Schools invited Lucas and Emily to speak about empathy and resilience, and community organizations used their story as a catalyst for kindness campaigns. The message was clear and resonant. One small act of kindness can spark a chain reaction that transforms lives. Their legacy became a living testament to the idea that every person has the power to make a difference, no matter their circumstances. On anniversaries and special occasions, Lucas and Emily revisited Thomas's place, reminding themselves and others of the journey that had brought them together. These gatherings became celebrations of progress and perseverance, moments to honor the past while looking toward the future. Each event reinforced the importance of community, reminding everyone involved that kindness is a continuous, collective effort. The story of Lucas and Emily was eventually compiled into a book and documentary, reaching a global audience. Their message transcended cultural and social boundaries, touching hearts worldwide. People wrote to share how their story had inspired personal change, encouraged acts of kindness, and renewed faith in humanity. The legacy they built was no longer just theirs. It belonged to anyone willing to embrace compassion and resilience. Through all of this, Lucas and Emily remained humble, grounded by the values that had guided them from the start. They understood that their journey was not about fame or recognition, but about the quiet, persistent power of love and kindness to transform lives. Their commitment to one another and to their community served as a constant reminder that true legacy is built through everyday acts of courage and compassion. As they looked toward the future, hand in hand, Lucas and Emily knew their story was only beginning. With hearts full of hope and a shared mission, They continued to inspire others to believe in the possibility of change. Their legacy born from a single act of kindness proved that even in the darkest moments, light could be found. And with that light, they were ready to keep building a world where empathy, love, and second chances were not exceptions, but the rule. If this story moved your heart, don't let it end here. Subscribe now and join a community where love, hope, and second chances come alive with every story. And if someone needs to hear this, share it. You never know how much one story can change a life.